So the newspaper article is a really good one, and the analogy. And so newspaper could have different sections. We could have the main section. We could have the business. We could have global, and then that section could have different articles. So I think that's a really good analogy. And each article could have different sections. So an article on Africa could have a section about regional conflicts, a section about economic developments within the article. So sections can have articles. Articles can have sections. Sections can have sections. I think articles can have articles. But if we go look at the article element, here's the example. Here's the outer article, and it has inner articles, right? And if we actually look at the documentation on that, so for an article, it can take any flow content, right? And permitted parent, any element that accepts flow content. Note that an article element must not be a descendant of an address element. Okay, fine. So that's like the definitive source, like what can reside within this. Because if we went and we looked at like the element reference, UL, OL, so the UL is not going to say anything, right? Permitted content, LI, or OL, ULs, so subnested lists, though that's not very clearly said. The footer element often has a list of links that don't need to be a nav element. That's true. That's straight out of the documentation. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing where do I use my nav. If anybody has anything they want to contribute, I know I'm just kind of like firing through my thoughts, but if you have more thoughts to say about any of these tags, just jump in. I know some of you have no qualm making your voice heard, which is great. There can only be one of these tags per document, and the tag is for the primary content in the document, main, right? So, okay, that's good to keep in mind, semantically marking up. Here's the main content of the page. This is it. It's between these tags, right? So this tag cannot be used for content that's repeated across a set of documents, nor can it be used for sidebars, navigation links, copyright information, site logos, and search forms. So it's really like this is the main part of the page. Use this tag to enclose an area that may contain some or all of the following. Information about the author. Information about the author would be something else. Information about the author, the copyright data, links related to related documents. That's footer, so that's just part of the definition of a footer. And that's often what we find in a footer, right? Like who made this page, what companies it belonged to, what's the copyright, and here are a few other links. Use this tag for the top area of a document, article, or section. That would be the header. And so we saw that, when we were looking at these pictures, right, pretty clearly. Hey, there's the header. That's what it's kind of looking like. And you'd use this tag for a forum post, a magazine or newspaper article, a blog entry, a user review, an object, or any other independent item of content. Independent item of content, that's one of the big things. It could stand on its own. What that means, it could stand on its own. You can pull it out of its context wherever it's at. Like, if it's a newspaper article, you could cut that article out of the paper and you could just pin it to a corkboard in the hall and people come by and that article stands on its own. However, you can't do that with a section. Like if there's the Africa article and you cut out the regional conflict section from the article and pin that out, people will read that regional conflict and they'll be like, well, where's the rest of the article? I want the whole story. I'm only getting part of it. And why, in fact, is there even just this one little section, regional conflict? Regional conflict where? It probably won't say regional conflict in Africa, just regional conflict. What? So articles stand on their own, sections don't. And both of them typically contain a heading. Typically, which is like, you better have a damn good reason to not have a heading in your article or your section. That's what that means, right? Like, pretty much all the time, you want to have an H1 or H6 in your article or your section. They need a heading, okay? So, and, if there's some reason that, okay, cool, that one doesn't, but you are aware that typically most of the time, 99% of the time, they have a heading. This tag is for thematic grouping of content, so that's the exact definition of section. Thematic grouping of content, it's a section. So regional conflict, okay, this section is about regional conflict, or economic development, okay, this section's about economic development. Do not use the section element as a generic container. This is what div is for, especially when the sectioning is only for styling purposes. True. So how do you know when to use a section versus a div? You use a section when you want it to appear in the outline. So we haven't created outlines yet, but this is like an example of an outline, not a very good one, right? So here's another example of an outline. And outline. I imagine I'll find something in there that has a pretty good outline. There's a good example of an outline, right? So we're creating document structure with different HTML semantic tags. We're structuring our document. That's step one. Step two is to make sure we have a good outline, right? So that's going to be step two. And then step three is to do our layout. So next week we'll be working on outline. And maybe, depending upon how fast that goes, we'll be doing layout. Okay? But like, that's great. And document structure is important. Page rank, accessibility, page rank in search engines, accessibility, and then, I don't know, helping people navigate content. Like, poorly structured content confuses people. You want to have clearly structured content. I try to structure my content in classes as clearly as possible, right? Like, have this nice outline. You go in, okay, so what we're doing, here are the steps. Good, I know where things are at. I know the lay of the land. I see the roadmap. Clearly structured content. You have all been in classes where it's not that way. I have taught classes where it hasn't been this good. This class might deteriorate depending upon how my workloads go. It might not be as good, and you'll long for the early weeks of the semester where it was going better. But clearly structured content's important. And so when you want something to appear in your outline, use section. If you don't want it to be in your outline, use div. We're going to learn about outlines next week.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What add-on are you using for your add-on there?
What add-on am I using? Oh, right here? Yeah, thanks. This is a Chrome plugin, and it's called, so you could add things to Chrome, and if I go into settings, and then go over to extensions, and then I can scroll down here, and I have super simple highlighter. It lets me highlight web pages, and it remembers as I come back to the page what I highlighted. I love that. And you can see my other ones here. Take a screenshot, and then take a screenshot. That's HTML5 outliner. So that's kind of a nice one. You could disable them. So like, hey, I don't want my Hangouts coming up. I could trash it or disable it right there. But I don't want to be bugged when I'm working. When deciding whether or not to use section or div, you should use section if you want the content to appear in the outline. Much like OL and UL create lists, this tag is used to create a list of terms and descriptions. Common uses for this element are to implement a glossary or to display metadata. So you could use UL, OL, and you could also, and let's just go back to element list, and we have here up at the top, we have DD, DL, and DT. Right? So DD indicates the description term in a description list. DL encloses list of pairs, terms, and descriptions, and DT identifies a term in a definition list. So we'd have, just like we have a UL or OL, we have a DL. UL, OL, DL. So UL is unordered list, right? Just bullet points. OL is ordered list, and that's going to be numbers. And DL is a definition list, right? Or they call it description list. And so that's going to be a list of definitions. And we could have a definition term and then a definition. DT is definition term. DD is definition. So the DL would be my favorite words. Here's a DL of my favorite words. So I'd have DLs, and then I have a DT. Sesquipedalian would be enclosed in DT. And then the DD would be one who has a propensity for using large words, is the DD for the DT of sesquipedalian. I don't have any other favorite words coming to mind for me, so I'm going to put in DD. No, DL. A caption can be associated with a figure element by inserting a fig caption. True. When deciding between article and section, if something can stand on its own, use article. True. A document may have several nav elements. True. This element encloses the main content in the body. Main. And a moment of doubt, right? Like, wow, that was pretty easy. Is that true? Is that a trick question? represents the main content of the body. Okay, main content in the body. Article can contain multiple sections. True. Uses tag for sidebars, inserts, advertisements, biography of the author, and related links on blog aside. This element is a generic container for flow content, which does not inherently represent anything. It can be used to group elements for styling purposes, using class or ID attributes, or because they share attribute values. It should be used only when no other semantic element is appropriate. Div. You could use this tag to enclose any of the following: image, illustration, diagram, code snippet, figure. That's straight out of the definition of figure. So image, illustration, diagram, code snippet. Use this tag for the bottom area of a document, article, or section. Footer. You know, we normally think of footers at the end of a document, but you know, we have these examples here, and here's a footer of an article footer. Right, so it doesn't have to be down here at the document. It can be the footer of the article. And what is enclosed in a footer often? The author of the page, the copyright, links to a few other places. Huh? Privacy policy, sure. This tag surrounds content that can be placed somewhere else and stand on its own article. So some of those you got a couple of times. All right, the next one. Use this element to enclose. So now we're going to inline text semantics. And so we have right here, we're going to be looking at these tags and which of these inline text semantics. So, you know, we were looking more at block level stuff, right? Like address, article, footer, header, H1s, block level. So who knows the difference between block and inline? So elements have a display property. They have a default display property. Block, things that have a display property of block are going to take up a whole line by themselves and fill the whole width, right? And elements that have inline just kind of take up, you know, in line with other stuff, whatever space, and take up as little space as possible, only the necessary space for their content inline. And so you could play with that, you know, and kind of see it if we just went back to temp here and we do like a div, and then we do like a style up here, and then we say, hey, all divs, background color, that, and width. Let's do a height. See what that looks like. I gave it a height, and it took up as much width as possible. What would happen if I didn't give it a height? Oh. All right. Oh, of course, I could change its width. And, you know, do border radius. Cool, or 30%, or you know, I could do treble. You guys know treble? It's kind of interesting. I could also use pixels instead. See how that looks different. Exactly the same. No, a little different. I like percent better. So treble is top right, top right, bottom left. Treble. Top right, bottom left. That's trouble. And then sometimes you'll see, I don't have a cool acronym for this, but it's TBRL, right? And so if I just had that, well, the 30% is top and bottom, and the right and left is 10%. So top, right, bottom. So these will be 30%, and the right, left will be 10%. So now I just got to comment that out. Otherwise, you can see that top and bottom are 30%, right and left are 10%. And then there's just all of them together is just 1. So you got 3 options. And so when we do like margin 0 auto, whoa, because it said, hey, the margin for the top and bottom, 0. And for the right and left, automatically make it equal on both sides. So when to automatically make it equal on both sides, puts it in the middle. So that's cool.
Does that work on any screen?
I'm going to say no, because any screen is like everything.
Well,
who knows?
Would it work on this versus that?
Yeah, no, it should work on in most places. That's like, I mean, you could see compatibility at can I use, and so it's really just margin. So yes, that's going to work everywhere. Decoration break, logical properties. That's a CSS whatever property value deal. So I'm not sure what we looked up for that. Is that a related link? What? Margin 0 auto? Oh, can I use? Yeah, that's one of the references. And I was just looking there because I'm actually having a little bit of a brain fart. Because rule sets, and we went over this so many times, rule sets are made up of your selector and then your declaration block. And your declaration block has declarations, and each declaration is made up of property values. Is that right? Is that what the right terminology, property values? So, so rule sets are made up of a selector and a declaration block. The block is between 2 curlies. Declaration block is made up of declarations, and each declaration is property value. So, but I was just wondering, where do I see CSS properties? I've never actually tried to look up a CSS property. In CSS logical properties, you start in properties, depend on CS2 on margin. These properties are supported in effectively all browsers. So cool, they're here, right? So margin is supported in all browsers. So that means whatever browser somebody's looking at. And so you can look up other things, like we're going to use Flexbox. And so Flexbox layout is 95% of browsers. So there's going to be some people out there it doesn't work, right? And to which case you can make the decision for your site to help those people. They don't get to enjoy my site, right? If you're a hillbilly living in Alabama and you're still using IE8, you don't get to enjoy my site. Or, okay, you want me to change that? If you're a government employee, or if you're the President of the United States working on your old Windows XP, you don't get to enjoy my site. The government should upgrade. So here are the browsers it doesn't work on. Whatever, I want to get through this. All right, so you use this element to enclose either time on a 24-hour clock or a precise date in Gregorian calendar. So if you have time stuff, it could go inside the time tag. So that'd be time. Use this element to enclose sample output from your computer program. It's usually displayed in the browser's default monotype font. That's going to be SAMP. So that one is here, SAMP, right there. Sample output from a computer program. You could tell, like, the people who are computer people wrote this because they gave themselves preference. We need a SAMP. It just seems like way specific. Use this element to enclose a range of text that has been added to a document. So if something's been added to a document, I think that's the demarcation one. Demarcating. Here, deleted, inserted. So we use insert, right? This element encloses a reference to a creative work. That's going to be cite for a citation. Use this element to enclose a range of text that has been deleted from a document. That's going to be del. So if something is deleted, you want to kind of show people, hey, this is deleted, I changed it. It often has a strike through, but doesn't need to all the time. Do not use this element to increase the gap of lines between your text. Instead, use CSS, margin property, or the P. You don't want to use break, like, oh, let me add a little bit more styling space here. Like some people do that with break. Don't do that. Do it in CSS. Make the space and layout in CSS. Okay. Should I buy beer? Buy. Just kidding. In class. Making that joke. This element encloses an abbreviation. So you see this in Shay Howe's book really nicely, right? He's using abbreviation on stuff because it's like right here I hover over this and then I get that little tooltip off to the right. What are HTML and CSS, right? I think that's probably an abbreviation with the tag set, whatever it is. No, it's not. I don't know how he's doing that. What are HTML and CSS? ID, H2 ID. What are HTML and CSS? What are HTML and CSS? I don't know. He's got some JS or something happening there. But abbreviation looks interesting. I haven't played with it. Anybody have insight, let me know. But represent an abbreviation optionally provides a full description for it. If present, the title attribute must contain this full description and nothing else. Right? So let's just play with it. Let's bring this out and drop it into our temp. So here's our temp. We're making it work. Right? And let's look at that. And I do HTML. I don't know what good that does me. Oh, hypertext markup language. So I got a little tooltip when I hover over it. It gives me the tooltip for what that abbreviation stands for. That's cool. You guys okay hanging out?
I actually have class active.
See ya. I'll take roll some other time. What tag goes here? Control, what tag goes here? So if you did Control S, which would be the tags that you use? I started going through this too late. Control S. So keyboard, is that right? Yeah, so KBD. And that's actually the example. Control S, KBD. So hey, this is keyboard that people should hit. Keyboard. Use this element for text which should be displayed higher. That's going to be sup. For enclosed in a short quotation, it's going to be Q. Generic line, inline container, is span. And strike through text with a line, you use strike through. I believe that's right, isn't it? Just strike. That's kind of a lot to type, huh?
It's just S, yeah.
It's just S. Thank you. Use this element for side comments and small print, including copyright and legal text, small. Use this tag to enclose a fragment of computer code. By default, it is displayed in monospace font. I'm going to say code, though I have some doubt. It's code? All right. And then use this element to highlight text. Is it just highlight? No, mark. And then use this element for text, which should be displayed lower, sub. How many people, you got good value out of that today? Cool. All right, yeah, me too. See you.
Oh, question about on the submission for D. How do you want it? Yeah.
Just a screenshot, upload a screenshot to